I remember the morning I learned that Gallipoli had ended in catastrophic failure. The newspapers did not merely report the disaster, they savaged me personally, and with a ferocity that suggested they had been waiting for such an opportunity. My colleagues, those stalwart friends of sunnier days, discovered urgent business elsewhere whenever I appeared. I was stripped of the Admiralty, cast out from the work that had been my passion and my purpose, left to wander the political wilderness like some Old Testament figure being punished for sins I could not name. For months, I lived in a darkness so complete that I could see no glimmer of light in any direction. I had sent thousands of young men to their deaths in a campaign that ended in humiliation. My career, which had seemed destined for the highest reaches, appeared to have concluded in disgrace before reaching its prime. I was 41 years old, and I believed my useful life was finished. Yet I tell you now, from the vantage of decades and with the clarity that only time can provide, that darkness gave me gifts I could have obtained no other way. It taught me lessons about command, about the gap between plan and execution, about the weight of decisions that cost lives, lessons I desperately needed but would never have sought voluntarily. Those lessons, burned into my consciousness with the fire of genuine failure, later proved invaluable when I returned to the Admiralty as Britain faced her greatest threat. My darkest day became my education. Yours can too. The prison we call safety. Let me speak plainly about a delusion that has kept more men from greatness than all the tyrants of history combined. It is this: the widespread belief that a good life is one which successfully avoids all serious darkness, that wisdom consists of organizing one's existence around the prevention of difficulty, that the fortunate soul is he who passes through his years unscathed by genuine adversity. This comfortable falsehood has imprisoned entire generations in cages of their own construction. They call these cages safety. I observed this pattern most clearly in the months before war descended upon Europe. Chamberlain and his circle believed themselves prudent, practical men of affairs. They imagined they were preserving peace by feeding Hitler small nations Austria, then Czechoslovakia, hoping that if they satisfied his appetite with others' flesh, he might spare their own. They organized the entirety of British policy around avoiding the darkness of war at any cost. Every decision, every negotiation, every shameful concession flowed from this principle. We must not face darkness. But observe what their supposed wisdom produced. Their very flight from darkness led them directly into the abyss. Had we faced smaller darkness earlier, had we confronted Hitler when we still held military advantage, when he was weak and we were strong, we might have prevented the catastrophe that followed. Instead, their avoidance made war inevitable and infinitely more terrible. I watched this tragedy unfold, powerless to prevent it, my warnings dismissed as the ravings of a warmonger. The lesson burned itself into my consciousness with fire I shall never forget. You see, most men confuse comfort with safety. They believe that by avoiding difficulty they protect themselves from harm. The opposite proves true. They make themselves increasingly fragile, like muscles that atrophy from disuse. The man who has never been tested does not know what he is capable of enduring. When darkness inevitably arrives, as it must, for every human being who draws breath, he possesses no foundation of proven resilience upon which to stand. He collapses at the first genuine blow because he has spent his entire existence arranging circumstances to avoid ever receiving one. Consider your own life decisions over the past year. How many choices were made primarily to avoid discomfort? The conversation you delayed because it might prove awkward. The opportunity you refused because it carried risk of failure. The truth you kept silent because speaking it might create conflict. The venture you abandoned because success was not guaranteed. Count them honestly, for this exercise requires brutal self-examination. Most people, when they conduct this accounting with genuine honesty, discover themselves shocked by the extent to which fear governs their every decision. But here is what you must understand. This flight from darkness costs you everything. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you trade a piece of your potential for temporary ease. You make yourself smaller. You accept limitation. You build the walls of your own prison one comfortable brick at a time, and then you stand inside those walls believing yourself safe when you are actually trapped. The darkness will come regardless. Life does not offer the option to avoid all adversity. That path does not exist, though millions exhaust themselves searching for it. The only choice you possess is whether you will face darkness as someone who understands its purpose and can extract its gifts, or as someone who sees only catastrophe and learns only bitterness. One path leads to capability and wisdom, the other leads to victimhood and stagnation. What prosperity cannot teach, I speak now from the vantage point of one who has known both prosperity and darkness, success and catastrophic failure, the heights of political power and the depths of political exile. What I tell you comes not from theory but from hard experience in the crucible of genuine consequence. It is this: success and prosperity, while pleasant companions, are remarkably poor teachers. During my decade in the political wilderness, excluded from office while war clouds gathered over Europe, I had opportunity to observe something curious about human development. Young members of Parliament who rose smoothly through the ranks, blessed with family connections, inherited wealth, and easy advancement through privilege, rarely developed genuine depth of character. They had never been tested by genuine difficulty. They had never been forced to discover what they were made of. Their path had been so smooth, their ascent so effortless, that they coasted on surface capabilities sufficient for ordinary circumstances, but wholly inadequate for genuine crisis. When war came, many of these fortunate sons crumbled under pressure. They lacked steel, but those who had clawed their way up through real difficulty, who had tasted defeat and humiliation, and learned to extract lessons from both these men, possessed substance that the fortunate lacked entirely. Prosperity had given the privileged polish and social grace. Adversity had given the others something far more valuable: actual capability forged in the fire of genuine challenge. You see, in times of ease you develop only the capabilities ease requires. When life proceeds smoothly, you need never discover your depths because surface-level competence proves sufficient. You coast. But when darkness descends, when circumstance demands more than you currently possess, you face a choice: develop new capabilities or collapse. Most people, when pressed by genuine necessity, discover they are capable of far more than they imagined. But they never make this discovery in prosperity, because prosperity never demands it. Consider friendship as example. In your years of success and rising fortune, you cannot distinguish true allies from fair-weather companions. When the sun shines, all men smile at you with equal warmth. The colleague who courts you for your connections appears identical to the friend who values you for yourself. You cannot tell the difference. But let your fortunes fall, let you lose the office that brought you power, the wealth that attracted admirers, the status that commanded respect, and watch what happens. Half your supposed friends will vanish as morning mist burns away in sunlight. This is darkness's gift. You now know whom to trust. I learned this lesson repeatedly in political life. When I held office, my company was sought by dozens who professed loyalty and friendship. When I lost office, and my positions became unpopular, most disappeared. They had not been lying, they genuinely believed themselves my friends, while circumstances made friendship cost them nothing. But when friendship required actual loyalty rather than pleasant association, their true nature revealed itself. This knowledge proved invaluable. When I returned to power in Britain's darkest hour, I knew exactly whom to trust in genuine crisis and whom to keep at careful distance. Prosperity teaches you that you are brilliant when often you were merely fortunate. Success allows you to maintain comfortable illusions about yourself, about others, about how the world actually operates. These illusions feel pleasant, but they are dangerous. Better to lose them in smaller darkness than to cling to them, until larger catastrophe forces the lesson upon you with interest compounded. Examine your past successes honestly. What did they actually teach you? Most people discover their successes taught them surprisingly little, perhaps only that they could succeed when conditions aligned favorably, when luck smiled upon them, when no serious obstacles appeared. Now examine your setbacks and failures with equal honesty. What did these teach you? Most discover their setbacks taught them vastly more: how to handle genuine pressure, where their judgment proved flawed, who their real friends were, what capabilities they needed to develop. This recognition transforms your relationship to success and failure entirely. The severe mercy, why darkness must be dark. Let me now confront the question that troubles every thinking person who encounters these ideas. If darkness teaches valuable lessons, does this mean my suffering was good? That I should seek out catastrophe? That the universe is somehow benevolent in its cruelties? No, and this distinction is absolutely crucial to understand correctly. Darkness is severe mercy. Both words matter equally. It is severe because it must be gentler. Experiences cannot teach these lessons. The blacksmith's hammer must strike hard enough to shape the metal. Lighter taps produce nothing but noise. The forge must be hot enough to soften iron. Lukewarm heat merely wastes fuel. But darkness is mercy, genuine mercy, because it forges capabilities you desperately need for work you cannot yet imagine, for challenges that are even now approaching, though you do not see them. After the Gallipoli disaster ended my tenure at the Admiralty, I spent months, wasted months. I now recognize drowning in bitterness and self-pity. Why must I endure such catastrophic failure? What kind of universe arranges things so cruelly that good intentions and vigorous action can produce such terrible results? I felt the injustice of it with every fiber of my being. The newspapers savaged me without mercy. Colleagues who had courted my favor when I held power now distanced themselves as from a man carrying plague. I was removed from the work that had been my passion and my purpose, cast out into political wilderness that seemed likely to prove permanent. For a time, I wallowed. I raged. I nursed my wounds and counted my grievances, but eventually too slowly, too late. But eventually I began to understand something that changed everything. Had the Dardanelles campaign succeeded easily, I would have learned nothing of genuine value. Success would have reinforced my existing assumptions, left me believing my judgment infallible, given me false confidence that nearly any plan executed with sufficient vigor must succeed. These comfortable illusions would have made me dangerous in positions of greater responsibility. The severity of that failure shattered these illusions completely. It taught me lessons I could learn no other way, that good intentions are not sufficient, that planning must be matched by execution, that command structures matter desperately, that one must verify assumptions rather than accept them, that the weight of decisions that cost lives never leaves you. When I returned to the Admiralty 25 years later, as Britain faced the greatest threat she had ever known, these lessons proved absolutely essential. The man who led Britain through the Second War could not have done so without the education provided by catastrophic failure in the First. This is why darkness must be dark. Lesser difficulties allow you to blame external circumstances rather than examine your own judgment deeply. Small failures let you console yourself that you were close to success, that you nearly got it right, that only bad luck or others' failures prevented your triumph. Only severe darkness forces genuine reckoning. Only catastrophe strips away all the comfortable excuses and forces you to confront hard truths about your assumptions, your capabilities, your judgment. The severity is not cruelty, it is necessity. But understand this clearly. You should not seek out suffering. That would be perverse and unhealthy. When darkness comes, as it inevitably does in any life lived with purpose and ambition, you face a choice. Will you see only catastrophe, or will you recognize the severe mercy being offered? The man who seeks darkness is a fool, but the man who cannot extract gifts from the darkness that inevitably arrives is equally foolish, though in a different manner. The crucible: how darkness actually forges capability. Let me reveal to you now the actual mechanism by which darkness transforms human beings from ordinary into exceptional. This is not mysticism or poetic metaphor. It is an observable process that operates according to definite principles, which I can describe with precision. Darkness forges capability through the simplest and most brutal mechanism imaginable. It removes all alternatives except development or destruction. When comfort is stripped away, when easy options disappear, when you face demands that exceed your current capacity by a significant margin, you discover you possess only two choices. You either develop new capability sufficient to meet the demand, or you fail completely. There is no middle ground. Most people, when faced with this stark choice, discover they are capable of far more than they imagined. But they never make this discovery in prosperity, because prosperity never forces it. Consider Britain before the war. We had grown soft through decades of peace and prosperity. We believed we could maintain our position through cleverness and negotiation, avoiding the harsh necessities of genuine military preparation. We had convinced ourselves that modern civilization had progressed beyond the barbarism of large-scale conflict, that economic interdependence would prevent war, that reasonable men could always find reasonable solutions. These were comfortable beliefs, and we clung to them despite mounting evidence that a monster was rising in Central Europe who cared nothing for reason or civilization. Then darkness descended upon us with shocking swiftness. France fell. Our army escaped Dunkirk but left behind virtually all its heavy equipment. Invasion seemed imminent. We stood alone against Nazi Germany at the height of its power, with the Soviet Union allied to Hitler and America still neutral. Any rational calculation suggested defeat. Suddenly we faced demands that far exceeded what we believed ourselves capable of meeting. We had to mobilize industrial capacity we did not know we possessed. We had to innovate strategically in ways we had never attempted. We had to maintain unity and morale under sustained bombing that should have shattered civilian resolve. We had no choice: develop these capabilities or perish. and Britain discovered what she was actually made of. The nation that had seemed soft and decadent revealed reserves of courage, resilience, and determination that astonished even those of us who believed in British character. These capabilities had always existed, but they remained dormant because peacetime prosperity never demanded their activation. Darkness provided the necessity. The forge was hot, and Britain was tempered into something stronger than what had entered the flames. This is the mechanism in your own life as well. When you find yourself in darkness facing demands that exceed your current capacity, ask yourself specifically, what capability is this situation demanding that I do not yet possess? Is it resilience in the face of setback? The ability to act decisively with incomplete information? Emotional regulation under extreme pressure? Strategic thinking under constraint? Different darknesses demand different capabilities. Gallipoli demanded that I develop understanding of complex command structures and the terrible gap between planning and execution. The wilderness years demanded that I develop patience to hold unpopular positions and discipline to prepare without knowing when opportunity would arrive. You see, you do not know your actual capacity until circumstances demand you discover it. The businessman who believes he works hard discovers he can work harder when survival demands it. The mother who thinks she has reached her limit finds reserves when her child's welfare requires them. The soldier who imagines he has expended his last ounce of courage discovers more when his comrades depend upon him. Darkness reveals capacity that comfort kept hidden. This revelation is the gift, though you would never choose the darkness that forces it upon you. The daily extraction, mining darkness for its gold. Here is a truth that cost me years of wasted suffering to learn. The gifts of darkness do not appear automatically. You must dig for them daily, systematically, with the same discipline a miner applies to extracting gold from hard rock. The gold is there, I promise you that, but you must do the work of extraction. Most people waste their darkness entirely because they wait passively for time to heal their wounds, rather than actively extracting lessons while the experience remains fresh and the pain still teaches. During my wilderness years, that decade, when I was excluded from government office, while watching with mounting horror as Hitler rearmed Germany and prepared for conquest, I developed a daily practice that transformed what might have been merely frustrating years into the most valuable education of my life. Each evening, I would sit with pen and paper and ask myself 3 questions. What did today's difficulty teach me? What capability did it force me to develop? What truth did it reveal that I could not see in comfort? Some days the answers came clearly. I was learning patience, the capacity to hold an unpopular position year after year without wavering, waiting for events to prove its wisdom. I was discovering who remained loyal when I held no office and could offer no favors, genuine friends revealed by adversity. I was developing capabilities I had never needed while holding power. The discipline to write serious history, the freedom to speak truths no serving minister could speak, the time to study and prepare for a role I sensed was coming, though I could not yet see its shape. Other days I saw nothing. The frustration seemed pointless, the exile merely painful, the lessons invisible. But I asked the questions regardless. I recorded my answers, and over months, patterns emerged that I could not have seen in any single day. I was being forged, though the forging felt like simple suffering in the moment. You must understand that lessons fade if not extracted immediately. The businessman who loses everything learns profound truths about risk, judgment, and resilience in the immediate aftermath of failure. 5 years later, if he has not deliberately extracted and preserved these lessons, they have faded like morning mist. The wound has healed, which is natural and good, but the teaching has been lost. He may have to learn the same lessons again through future darkness, because he failed to mine the first darkness for its gold, while that gold was still visible. Here is your practice, then, starting tonight. Implement the 3 daily questions as your evening discipline. Spend 5 minutes reviewing your day with brutal honesty. What capability did today's difficulties demand that I develop? What comfortable illusion did today's challenges strip away? What truth did today's adversity reveal about myself, about others, about how the world actually operates? Write brief answers. Some days will yield profound insights, other days will seem barren. Continue regardless. The practice itself matters more than any single day's results. Over weeks and months, you train yourself to extract value from difficulty as automatically as you currently extract pleasure from success. This transforms your relationship to all experience. Both pleasant and difficult days become sources of growth and learning. Nothing is wasted. Every experience, properly received, advances your development toward capability you do not yet possess but will desperately need. After 30 days of this practice, review all your entries together. Look for patterns. Which capabilities are being repeatedly demanded? Which illusions are being systematically stripped away? Which truths are being revealed from multiple angles? These patterns show you what your current life is trying to teach you, what it is forging you to become. This awareness allows you to cooperate with the process rather than merely enduring it in blind confusion. Do not expect profound insights every day. That expectation will only frustrate you. Some days yield little. The practice matters more than any single result. Also, avoid the trap of forced positivity, pretending darkness is pleasant or inventing imaginary lessons where none exist. If you genuinely cannot identify clear lessons on a given day, write "No clear lessons today" and continue. Honest acknowledgement of unclear days maintains the integrity that makes clear days genuinely valuable. The 5 passages through catastrophe. When genuine catastrophe strikes, when you face your actual darkest day, you require more than daily questions and general principles. You need a complete map of the territory you must traverse. I discovered through bitter experience that transformation from victim to beneficiary follows 5 predictable stages, each with specific requirements and specific dangers. Skip a stage or rush through it carelessly, and you emerge with trauma rather than capability. The wound festers rather than heals cleanly. Let me trace these passages using my own journey through the 1945 election defeat as illustration. That morning, learning the British people had voted me out of office after leading them through our finest hour, I felt shock so profound it seemed to stop time itself. My first instinct was to interpret this as rejection, as ingratitude, as incomprehensible betrayal after all we had endured together. These interpretations felt completely real and utterly justified. But such interpretations are precisely what the first passage requires you to move beyond. Recognition without resistance means seeing what actually occurred, stripped of the catastrophic meanings your wounded mind wants to impose. The British people had voted for a different vision of the peace. This was fact. This was their democratic right, the very freedom we had fought to preserve. It was not judgment on my worth as human being, or even on my wartime leadership. This distinction between bare fact and emotional interpretation is absolutely essential. Your darkest day is never as dark as fear makes it seem in the moment. The second passage opens when you can genuinely ask, what might this be preparing me for? Not, why did this happen to me? That question leads only to victimhood and paranoia. But, what is this darkness trying to teach me? Perhaps I needed rest after years of wartime leadership that had consumed every ounce of my strength. Perhaps there was work only possible outside office. This question transforms your relationship to darkness immediately. You are no longer simply suffering, you are learning. The third passage requires daily extraction, the practice from the previous chapter, applied with particular discipline during acute darkness. What capabilities is this demanding? What illusions is it stripping away? After my defeat, I was forced to develop capacities I had not needed while holding power. The ability to be productive and purposeful without official authority, the discipline to write my war memoirs with historical objectivity, the patience to let history render its judgment rather than demanding immediate vindication. Each capability developed in that darkness later proved valuable beyond measure. The fourth passage is where the deepest transformation occurs, the forging of new identity. Your darkest day destroys an old version of yourself, the self that held certain assumptions, that believed life would proceed according to certain patterns, that identified itself with particular roles and positions. This destruction feels like death, because it is death, but it creates space for a more capable self to emerge. After my defeat, I could no longer be the man who identified himself primarily as wartime leader. That role had ended, but a new identity emerged: elder statesman, historian, voice of warning about Soviet tyranny, an identity that served purposes I could not have fulfilled while still holding office. The fifth passage may take years to reach, but when you arrive, you recognize your darkest day as gift. Not grateful it happened, I am not perverse, but genuinely grateful for what it gave me, for who it made me capable of becoming, for work it made possible. I can now say that my 1945 defeat, painful as it was, gave me something I desperately needed and could not have received while holding power. Time to write history that needed writing. Freedom to speak truths about Soviet communism that no serving prime minister could speak, and rest that my exhausted body and mind required, though I would never have chosen it voluntarily. The hidden mathematics of risk and reward. Let me now reveal something most men catastrophically misunderstand: the true mathematics of safety and risk. They believe the safest path minimizes probability of failure. This seems self-evidently correct. It is entirely wrong. True safety lies not in avoiding all risk, but in developing capacity to survive and benefit from inevitable failure. The man who takes calculated risks and learns systematically from setbacks becomes what I shall call anti-fragile, actually strengthened by adversity rather than merely surviving it. The man who organizes his entire existence around avoiding all risk becomes increasingly fragile. When darkness eventually arrives, as it must, he has no resilience, no experience extracting lessons from difficulty, no foundation of proven capability under pressure. The first serious setback destroys him completely because he has never developed capacity to handle setback. I observed this pattern repeatedly during the war years in examining military officers under my command. Those who had never experienced combat failure often collapsed when first serious setback arrived. They had developed no resilience, no experience extracting lessons from darkness, no proven ability to recover from defeat. Their record of unbroken success actually made them more vulnerable, not less. But officers who had been defeated learned from that defeat, and return to command proved nearly unbreakable. They had practiced handling adversity. They knew they could survive it and emerge wiser. The formerly defeated officer was actually safer in command than the undefeated one, though conventional thinking suggested precisely the opposite. The mathematics favor the scarred veteran over the untested prodigy. Consider it this way: frequent small risks that teach resilience make you safer long-term than avoiding all risk until catastrophic failure becomes inevitable. The entrepreneur who launches modest ventures regularly, learns from setbacks, builds increasing capability. This man is safer than one who risks everything on a single massive bet after years of avoiding all previous risk. The first has developed resilience through managed exposure to difficulty. The second remains fragile, having never tested himself, never learned to extract lessons from setback, never built the capabilities that only adversity develops. When evaluating significant decisions, most people ask only, what is probability this fails? What happens if I fail? These are necessary questions, but incomplete. The enlightened assessment adds, if this fails, what will I learn? What capabilities will failure force me to develop? How will this setback prepare me for challenges I cannot yet foresee? This expanded calculation often reveals that apparent safe choices are actually more dangerous long-term because they teach nothing and leave you fragile. Some decisions become what I call no-lose when evaluated with proper mathematics. Success achieves your objective. Failure teaches you what you need to learn next and forces development of capabilities you will require for future challenges. Either outcome serves your development. This does not mean all decisions are no-lose. Some risks remain genuinely destructive. Wisdom lies in distinguishing decisions that risk educational darkness from decisions that risk purely destructive catastrophe. Understanding these mathematics transformed my own decision-making during the war years. I faced countless choices where probable cost was appalling but alternatives worse. I could make such decisions not through callousness but because I understood that even if outcomes proved catastrophic, lessons would be extracted and future judgment improved. This did not make decisions easy. They remained agonizing, but it made them possible rather than paralyzing. You must calibrate your courage appropriately with this knowledge. Be neither recklessly bold nor timidly cautious. Take calculated risks that serve worthy objectives because you trust your capacity to extract value even from setback. This is not confidence you will always succeed. That would be foolish. It is confidence you can handle whatever comes and learn from it, success or failure alike. The gifts, disguised as betrayal. I speak now of the darkest experiences human beings inflict upon one another. Betrayal, abandonment, the deliberate violation of trust. These wounds cut deeper than impersonal setback because they involve not merely circumstance but human malice or weakness. Yet even here, especially here, darkness contains gifts for those who know how to extract them. Political life showed me betrayal in its countless variations. Colleagues who courted my favor when I held power disappeared completely when I lost office. Allies who professed unwavering loyalty abandoned me the moment my positions became unpopular. Each instance stung deeply. The pain was real and justified. But observe what these betrayals actually gave me: priceless information about human character. When someone betrays you, they have delivered a gift they did not intend to give. You now know their actual character, not the pleasing mask they were wearing. You know what they are capable of, what they will do when tested, whom they actually serve. This information prevents far greater damage in future. The business partner who abandons you in difficulty has revealed he would have abandoned you in greater difficulty, later better to know now than then. The friend who spreads malicious gossip has shown she cannot be trusted with sensitive information, better to discover this before sharing something truly damaging. I learned after Gallipoli's disaster which colleagues possessed genuine loyalty and which merely performed loyalty while conditions made it costless. This knowledge proved invaluable throughout subsequent decades. When I returned to power in 1940, I knew exactly whom to trust in genuine crisis and whom to keep at appropriate distance. Their earlier betrayals were gifts. They revealed their nature before circumstances grew more serious, and their treachery could cause greater harm. But here is subtler teaching that requires particular honesty. Often, not always, but often criticism contains grains of truth we need to hear. The person delivering criticism may be malicious, but this does not automatically mean the criticism is entirely false. After the sting fades, you must examine whether any truth lurks within the attack. If so, correct that weakness. Your enemy has just identified vulnerability you can now address. This transforms even malicious criticism into useful information. Let me be clear, I am not suggesting you trust betrayers or maintain relationships with those who have proven themselves untrustworthy. That would be foolish. But neither should you waste the experience by learning nothing from it. Extract the information each betrayal provides. What does this reveal about their character? What warning signs did I miss or ignore? What can I learn about judging character more accurately? Over time, you become significantly harder to deceive. You recognize warning signs earlier, you trust the right people deeply, and keep appropriate distance from wrong ones. This is valuable capability, purchased through painful experience. Each betrayal, properly metabolized, makes you wiser about human nature without making you cynical. The lesson is not trust no one that leads to bitter isolation. The lesson is trust wisely and verify. Some people spend years obsessing over betrayals, gaining nothing from continued dwelling except bitterness that poisons their remaining relationships. This is waste. Extract maximum value from the experience, then release it. The information was valuable. The wound need not be permanent. You carry forward the wisdom without carrying forward the pain. The black dog's gifts what depression teaches. I venture now into the most personal territory, the darkness that arises from within rather than from external circumstance. I speak of depression, what I have called throughout my life, the black dog that visits unbidden and departs on its own schedule. For many years I believed this darkness purely destructive, serving no purpose, teaching nothing. I would have given anything to be free of it. What could melancholy possibly teach except misery? Eventually I discovered that even this most unwelcome darkness had given me gifts I desperately needed, though I never would have chosen the manner of their delivery. Let me be absolutely clear before proceeding. Depression is illness requiring proper treatment. What I say here is not substitute for medical care, but recognition that alongside treatment, one can extract certain gifts from experiences one would never voluntarily choose. The black dog visited throughout my life, often when I could least afford its presence. During crucial moments of wartime leadership, I would face deep melancholy that seemed to serve no earthly purpose. But I learned something essential. I could function effectively, make sound decisions, provide necessary leadership, even while enduring private darkness. Capability and internal suffering are not mutually exclusive. This knowledge proved invaluable throughout subsequent challenges. I knew I could do what needed doing regardless of internal conditions. Depression provided access to dimensions of human experience that people who have never experienced it cannot fully understand. I knew what it meant to suffer while appearing functional on the surface. I understood that someone may be drowning while their exterior seems calm. I possessed depths that more fortunate souls never develop. When I needed to speak to a nation in genuine anguish, when Britain faced darkness that threatened our very survival, I could speak with authentic understanding rather than theoretical sympathy. My depression had purchased this capacity. Moreover, depression strips away pleasant illusions and forces confrontation with reality without comforting filters. This creates particular kind of wisdom, dark wisdom perhaps, but genuine. The man who has endured depression possesses clearer sight about human suffering, about mortality, about what actually matters when comfortable delusions are burned away. This clarity serves, though you would never choose the fire that produces it. I do not recommend depression. I would not wish it upon anyone. I sought treatment when it became available and would encourage all who suffer to do likewise. But having experienced it, I can recognize certain gifts it forced upon me. Resilience to function despite internal difficulty, genuine empathy for others enduring similar darkness, understanding of human suffering that shallow optimism never touches, and clarity about what truly matters stripped of comfortable illusions. If you endure depression or anxiety, please first seek proper treatment. This teaching is not substitute for professional care. But alongside treatment, in calmer moments when you are stable enough to reflect, you might ask, what has this darkness taught me about functioning despite difficulty? What understanding of human experience have I gained? What capabilities have I developed because I had to learn to operate despite internal darkness? Many who have endured depression discover they possess remarkable resilience, genuine empathy, and hard-won wisdom about human condition. These are real gifts, though purchased at terrible price you would not have chosen. Decision-making, when you no longer fear darkness. I have shown you how to extract gifts from darkness in its various forms. Now observe how this understanding transforms the actual conduct of your life, beginning with the domain where transformation proves most immediately liberating, decision-making, under conditions of genuine uncertainty and significant risk. When you truly understand that even your darkest days contain gifts, when you know from direct experience that you can extract value from catastrophe, your entire approach to consequential decisions changes fundamentally. You are no longer paralyzed by fear of failure because you recognize that failure, should it come, will teach you something valuable and force development of capabilities you will need for future challenges. The terror that keeps most men forever cautious and small loses its power over you. The timid man evaluating difficult choice asks, what if this fails? He stops there, paralyzed by the question. He imagines catastrophe, feels the fear that imagination produces, and chooses safety. But safety is often illusion. The man who has learned these principles asks the same question, but continues beyond it. What if this fails? What would I learn? What capabilities would failure force me to develop? How might this setback prepare me for work I cannot yet imagine? This additional inquiry changes everything. During the war, I faced countless decisions where probable cost was appalling but alternatives worse. Ordering the destruction of French naval vessels at Mers el-Kebir, knowing it would kill French sailors and poison relations with former ally. Committing forces to campaigns where casualties would be severe and success uncertain, making strategic choices that sacrificed smaller objectives for larger ones. Each decision carried enormous weight, each produced its share of darkness. I could make such decisions not through absence of feeling or callousness toward human life, quite the opposite. I could make them because I no longer feared darkness in the paralytic way I had when younger. I knew that whatever darkness resulted from my decisions, I could face it, extract its lessons, and emerge with judgment sharpened rather than destroyed. This did not make decisions easy. They remained agonizing, but it made them possible rather than paralyzing. You see, understanding that darkness contains gifts calibrates your courage appropriately. You become neither recklessly bold nor timidly cautious. You can evaluate risks more clearly when you are not terrified of possibility of failure. You can take calculated risks that serve worthy objectives because you trust your capacity to handle whatever comes, success or failure. This is not confidence that you will always succeed that would be dangerous delusion. It is confidence that you can extract value from whatever occurs. Some decisions reveal themselves as what I call no-lose when evaluated with this understanding. Success achieves your objective directly. Failure teaches you what you need to learn next and forces development of capabilities you will require for subsequent challenges. Either outcome serves your development toward greater capability. This does not mean all decisions are no-lose. Some risks remain genuinely destructive, and wisdom requires distinguishing these from educationally valuable risks. But more decisions fall into no-lose category than you previously recognized when fear governed your calculations. Apply this framework to significant decision facing you currently. Assess traditional risk probability of success, consequences of failure. Then add the expanded questions. If this fails, what would I learn? What capabilities would failure demand I develop? How might this setback prepare me for something I cannot yet see? Sometimes this reveals the decision is safer than you thought. Sometimes it reveals genuine danger. Either way, You possess better information for choosing wisely. Love and trust after you have been tested. One might imagine that understanding darkness as gift would make you cautious in matters of the heart, guarded in relationships, unwilling to risk the vulnerability that love demands. I have observed precisely the opposite prove true. When you know from direct experience that you can survive and even benefit from betrayal, abandonment, and heartbreak, when these are no longer theoretical possibilities, but territories you have actually traversed, you become free to love more deeply and trust more wisely than those who have never been tested. The untested man holds himself back because he fears being hurt. His caution springs from knowing he has never survived serious hurt and therefore doubts his capacity to do so. He protects himself carefully, never committing fully, always maintaining escape routes and emotional reserves. He believes this caution keeps him safe. In truth, it merely keeps him alone and small. The tested man, the one who has been betrayed and survived it, who has loved and lost and discovered he could continue, this man possesses genuine freedom in relationships. He can love boldly because he knows that even if things end badly, he will extract gifts from that darkness and emerge stronger rather than destroyed. The fear of possible future pain no longer governs his capacity for present connection. I observed this pattern during the war years in Britain. Those who had never faced serious loss were often paralyzed by fear of losing loved ones. Their fear prevented them from connecting fully with those still present. But those who had already lost, whose cities had been bombed, whose children had been evacuated, whose husbands or wives had been killed, often loved more fiercely precisely because they knew loss was possible. They did not let fear of future loss prevent present love. Having survived darkness, they knew they could survive future darkness. This knowledge liberated them for genuine connection rather than self-protective caution. But understand clearly, this teaching does not make you naively trusting or recklessly vulnerable. You have learned to judge character through experience with both loyal friends and false ones. You recognize warning signs earlier. You trust wisely rather than indiscriminately, knowing which people merit deep trust and which require appropriate caution. You are neither cynical nor foolishly optimistic. You are realistic and bold simultaneously. Within relationships that prove trustworthy, you can commit fully because you know that even if circumstances eventually lead to painful ending, you will handle it. You can tell difficult truths because you no longer fear conflict as catastrophe. You can show genuine vulnerability because you know vulnerability is not weakness but strength, the courage to be seen as you actually are, rather than hiding behind protective masks. Having been through relationship darkness yourself, betrayal, abandonment, painful endings, you possess capacity for depth that protected people lack entirely. You can meet others in their darkness because you have been there. You can offer genuine understanding rather than theoretical sympathy. You know what it actually feels like, not merely what it theoretically might feel like. This makes you capable of richer relationships than self-protective caution ever produces. Consider your current relationships honestly. Are you holding back to protect yourself from possible hurt? What specifically are you protecting yourself from? Now ask, if the worst happened, if this person betrayed or abandoned me, what would I learn? What capabilities would that darkness force me to develop? Often you discover the fear is disproportionate to actual risk. Even worst-case scenario would be difficult, but not catastrophic, painful but not destroying. This recognition allows you to risk greater intimacy. You can love deeply while simultaneously accepting that nothing lasts forever. This is not cold detachment, it is mature realism that actually enhances rather than diminishes your capacity for connection. You treasure what you have while you have it, knowing it will not last forever, and this knowledge makes you more present rather than less. The final darkness: age, decline, and death. I speak now as one who has reached the far shore of life and can see with clarity born of proximity to the final darkness. Age brings its own catalogue of losses. Capabilities diminish, friends die, the body betrays you in countless small indignities. For most, this is pure catastrophe, a long defeat without redemption, a gradual diminishment that strips away everything they valued until only death remains. But apply these principles here too, in this final territory. Physical decline forces development of capabilities beyond the physical. As strength fades, perhaps wisdom deepens. As quick reflexes disappear, judgment may sharpen. As energy diminishes, presence can intensify. This compensation is not automatic. You must deliberately develop these deepening capabilities. But the possibility exists if you look for it, rather than fixating only on what is being lost. In my later years, I watched colleagues respond to aging's darkness in strikingly different ways. Some raged against it, growing bitter as capabilities left them. They saw only loss, only diminishment, only the cruel injustice of time's passage. They became increasingly focused on past glories, unable to find meaning in present reality. Their final years were consumed by resentment and regret. Others, fewer in number but genuine in their transformation, seemed to grow more luminous as physical powers faded. They developed a quality of presence and wisdom their younger selves had lacked. They possessed clarity about what truly mattered that they had never achieved in the busy years of building careers and accumulating achievements. The difference was not in what they faced, all faced similar decline, but in what they made of it. Same darkness, opposite responses. Proximity to death provides gift that youth cannot possess. Absolute clarity about what actually matters. Trivial concerns that consumed you at 40 seem absurd at 70. Petty resentments that poisoned relationships dissolve in the face of mortality's approach. Social pretensions that demanded so much energy reveal themselves as meaningless performances. What remains is what was always important: love, truth, beauty, the work that will outlast you, the wisdom you can pass to those who follow. This clarity is genuine gift, though purchased at the price of facing mortality honestly rather than denying it. The young man can afford to waste time because he imagines he possesses unlimited time. The old man knows precisely how precious each remaining day is. This knowledge focuses attention with laser precision on what deserves that attention. As your own time shortens, attention naturally shifts from what you can acquire to what you can give that will outlast you. This shift from getting to giving often produces the most meaningful work of your life. Many people's greatest contributions come in their final decades precisely because mortality has focused them on what truly matters and stripped away all the distractions that consumed earlier years. Having survived much darkness throughout your life, you can now teach others how to extract its gifts. Your own journey through difficulty becomes valuable precisely because you completed it. The man who has lived deeply, who has faced genuine darkness and learned from it, possesses wisdom that no amount of theoretical study can provide. This teaching may be your final darkness's greatest gift. What you learn through pain can spare others some portion of similar pain, or at least help them navigate their own darkness more skillfully. If you face aging's darkness currently, ask yourself, what capabilities can I develop now that I could not develop when younger? Wisdom requires decades of experience. You now possess that experience. Genuine presence requires slowing down. Age forces that slowing. Clarity about what matters requires proximity to death. You now have that proximity. Deliberately cultivate these deepening capabilities rather than only mourning fading ones. Also ask, what can I give while time remains? What teaching can you offer? What wisdom can you share? What creation can you complete? Your final decades can be your most meaningful if you recognize what this stage uniquely makes possible. The gifts are present. You must simply shift attention from what you are losing to what you can still develop and give. The architecture of excellence, why greatness requires darkness. Having shown you how to extract gifts from individual darknesses, I must now reveal something more fundamental about the nature of excellence itself. Genuine excellence is impossible without serious darkness. This is not motivational rhetoric designed to make you feel better about suffering. It is observable fact across every domain of human achievement. Study any person considered truly exceptional rather than merely competent in their field. The pattern is remarkably consistent. The exceptional general has been catastrophically defeated. The great statesman has endured public humiliation. The profound artist has faced devastating rejection that might have ended lesser careers. The brilliant scientist has been proven spectacularly wrong in full view of peers. No one achieves genuine greatness without passing through valleys of darkness that force capabilities prosperity can never forge. Consider military leadership, which I know most intimately. Wellington had been defeated before Waterloo. Napoleon had known catastrophic failure early in his career before his string of victories. Grant had been dismissed from the army in disgrace before circumstances gave him opportunity to prove his genius. Marlborough, my own illustrious ancestor, had been exiled and disgraced before becoming one of history's greatest commanders. Lee watched his tactical brilliance lead ultimately to strategic defeat. What separates these men from merely competent officers who never achieved greatness? The catastrophic failures taught them what success never could. They learned about the limits of human judgment, about the fog of war where nothing proceeds as planned, about the necessity of matching ambition to actual capacity rather than imagined capacity, about command under conditions of extreme uncertainty. These lessons cannot be taught in any classroom or learned from any book. They can only be forged in the fire of actual catastrophe where the stakes are real and the consequences immediate. This suggests something profound about excellence itself. It is not merely one possible outcome among others. It is specifically the product of learning to extract maximum value from darkness. Excellence and darkness are not opposites. One is the product of successfully metabolizing the other. The capabilities that constitute genuine excellence, deep judgment, resilience under pressure, realistic assessment of human nature, ability to act decisively with incomplete information, every single one of these requires darkness for its development. Darkness also eliminates those who cannot extract its gifts. This is harsh truth but observable. 10 officers face catastrophic defeat. 7 become bitter, broken, or merely adequate. 3 extract profound lessons and become exceptional. Darkness does not create excellence from nothing. It reveals and develops excellence in those capable of receiving it, while eliminating those who cannot. This is natural selection in human development. Surface-level capability suffices for ordinary circumstances. Anyone can captain a ship in calm seas. Genuine excellence requires depths only accessible through darkness. The businessman who has never faced bankruptcy does not know himself under maximum pressure. The leader who has never been rejected by those he led does not understand how to maintain vision when others abandon it. These depths remain unexplored until darkness forces their discovery. Examine people you consider truly excellent in any domain. Study their biographies carefully. With remarkable consistency, you will find they passed through significant darkness that forced capability, development, ordinary circumstances never demand. Then examine your own field. What separates exceptional performers from merely good ones? Usually the exceptional, have been tested more severely and extracted more thoroughly from those tests. This recognition transforms how you view your own darkness. It is not interruption to your path toward excellence, it is the path itself. Those who successfully avoid all darkness simultaneously avoid all possibility of genuine excellence. Those who extract maximum value from darkness they cannot avoid make excellence achievable. The connection is not optional, it is structural, built into the very architecture of human development. When nations face their darkest day, the principles governing individual darkness apply with equal force to collective darkness. Nations, like individuals, develop certain capabilities only through genuine crisis. Let me speak from direct experience of leading a nation through its darkest hour. Britain before the war had grown comfortable through decades of peace and prosperity. We believed we could maintain our position through clever diplomacy, avoiding harsh necessities of genuine military preparation. We convinced ourselves that modern civilization had progressed beyond large-scale conflict, that economic interdependence would prevent war, that reasonable men could always negotiate reasonable solutions. These were pleasant beliefs that allowed us to avoid unpleasant realities. Then darkness descended with shocking swiftness. France fell. Our army escaped Dunkirk but abandoned virtually all heavy equipment. Invasion seemed imminent. We stood alone against Nazi Germany at the height of its power, with the Soviet Union allied to Hitler and America still neutral. Any rational calculation suggested defeat was inevitable, but in that darkness, Britain discovered what she was actually made of. The nation that had seemed soft revealed reserves of courage, resilience, and determination that astonished even those of us who believed in British character. Industrial capacity we did not know we possessed was mobilized with remarkable speed. Strategic innovation emerged from necessity. Unity developed across class lines that had seemed permanent. Capacity for sustained sacrifice appeared where critics had predicted only self-indulgent comfort-seeking. These capabilities had always existed latently within the British people, but they remained dormant because peacetime prosperity never demanded their activation. Darkness provided that demand. The nation was being forged under pressure, becoming something more capable than what entered the war. Britain was passing through the fire and emerging tempered, transformed. This pattern extends across history. Athens reached her golden age following the Persian Wars that nearly destroyed her. Rome's greatest strength was forged through centuries of conflict. Modern Germany and Japan rose from the ashes of total defeat to become economic powers. Time and again, the same principle: nations that emerge strongest from darkness are those that learned its lessons most thoroughly. Shared darkness often creates unity that prosperity cannot generate. When external threat becomes severe enough, internal divisions diminish. People discover shared identity as members of nation facing common danger. During the Blitz, class divisions that had seemed permanent faded in face of shared suffering. The factory worker and the aristocrat stood together in the rubble, united by common threat and common purpose. National crisis also reveals what a people is actually capable of achieving, not what they believe themselves capable of in comfortable times, but what they can actually accomplish when survival demands maximum effort. Britain did not know we could endure sustained bombing while maintaining morale, mobilize industrial capacity so thoroughly, sustain unity under such pressure. We discovered this by being forced to discover it. One final observation about collective darkness: it often brings forward leaders who would never rise in comfortable times. I could only become Prime Minister in 1940 because darkness demanded capabilities. I possessed capabilities that seemed excessive and dangerous in peacetime. My warnings about Hitler had been dismissed as warmongering when times were comfortable. When darkness arrived, suddenly those same warnings appeared as prescient wisdom. Darkness selects for leaders appropriate to its demands. If you lead any organization, recognize that shared challenges, appropriately calibrated, can forge group capability that ease never develops. When genuine difficulty arrives, frame it as opportunity for the group to discover what it is actually capable of achieving. This is not manipulation, it is accurate recognition that groups, like individuals, develop resilience through managing adversity. The ultimate question: providence, purpose, and the architecture of reality. I venture now into territory where certainty gives way to mystery, where observation meets questions too profound for definitive answers. Yet the questions must be asked, because the patterns we have examined throughout this work point toward them insistently. The patterns are these: darkness forging capability with remarkable precision, catastrophe preparing for future work with uncanny accuracy, suffering revealing gifts that later prove essential. In my own life, Gallipoli taught me exactly what I needed to know for leading the Admiralty in the Second War. The wilderness years gave me exactly the freedom and preparation time I required for wartime leadership. My depression provided exactly the understanding of suffering I needed to speak authentically to a nation in anguish. Looking backward across 8 decades, each darkness appears so precisely calibrated to what I later needed that attributing it entirely to chance seems inadequate. Yet I cannot prove purpose. I can only observe pattern. Whether this suggests providence deliberately preparing you, or reality structured such that suffering naturally forges required capabilities, or you unconsciously selecting future work that utilizes capabilities your darkness developed. I cannot determine with certainty. Perhaps all three operate simultaneously. This much I can state with confidence. Looking forward, coherence is invisible. While enduring darkness, you cannot see what it prepares you for. The pattern reveals itself only years later, when you look backward and recognize with astonishment how perfectly each darkness equipped you for challenges you could not have imagined when enduring it. This temporal asymmetry coherence, visible only in retrospect, appears consistently across countless lives I have examined. Perhaps learning to extract gifts from darkness represents evolution in consciousness itself. The primitive response to darkness is pure fear and avoidance, the response of animal confronting threat. The developed response recognizes darkness as severe mercy, extracting maximum value from every experience, pleasant or difficult. Perhaps we are meant to develop this capacity. Perhaps this represents genuine human maturation beyond reactive fear toward conscious participation in our own development. But you need not resolve these metaphysical questions to benefit from practical implications. Act as if your darkest days are preparing you for important work you cannot yet see. Extract maximum value from every darkness that arrives. Develop capabilities that difficulty demands. Strip away illusions that adversity reveals. Whether you are being prepared by providence, shaped by reality's structure, or unconsciously developing toward work, you will later choose the practical response remains identical. Receive darkness as severe mercy rather than pure catastrophe. Extract its gifts systematically. Trust that future work will utilize capabilities you are developing now, even if you cannot yet imagine what that work might be. This trust, whether metaphysically justified or not, proves practically liberating. It allows you to face darkness without paralytic fear, to learn from suffering without being destroyed by it, to emerge from your darkest days with gifts rather than merely wounds. I close where we began, but with transformed understanding. Your darkest day, that moment you believed would destroy you, That experience you would erase from your history if you could was actually the moment you received access to capabilities impossible to develop any other way. The suffering you endured, terrible as it was, forged something in you that your life's most important work required. This is not sentiment meant to comfort. It is observable reality, verified in every life examined closely, including my own. The question is not whether your darkest days contain gifts. They do. The question is whether you will learn to extract and use those gifts, or whether you will carry your darkness as mere trauma and grievance. The principles are before you. The practices are clear. The map has been drawn. Now comes the only work that ultimately matters. Will you receive your darkest days, past, present, and future, as the gifts they are? The darkness will come whether you understand its purpose or not. The only choice is whether it destroys you or forges you, whether you emerge broken or strengthened, whether you carry trauma or treasure. Come then, the darkness has gifts for you. Will you learn to receive them?